Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon Tuesday meeting. Department updates. I see Joseph, museum.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about some of the happenings at the museum. I think it's been 6 months or so since we had a chance to connect like this. So my updates are going to go back into the fall of last year. And Kelly, if you could go ahead and start the PowerPoint. I've got a lot of pictures in this one for you. We can go to the next slide, please. And if you have any questions during the updates, feel free to let me know. First, I wanted to start with a facilities update. And our electronic reader board was in the works when we last met, and it was installed in October. We met in September. So it's been operating just fine. It's much better than the previous one that we had that was on 25-year-old technology. It's a lot easier to update it. Graphics are better. So thank you so much for approving that replacement for the one that died the previous year. We also had in the last couple of weeks pressure washed, facilities came by and pressure washed the backslide, please. Thank you. Pressure washed the front and back entrance concrete pads. They had been developing a lot of moss and stuff like that that forms at this time of year, and they look spectacular now. I mean, I don't think I would ever say this, but you can almost like eat your dinner on that back stoop now, because it just looks so grimy even when it was clean, and now it kind of sparkles and shines. So I thank facilities for coming out and making the museum just look so much more attractive at both entrances. We had changed our janitorial service at the beginning of this year for all departments. I just wanted to let you know that we're having our service with the modified system on Wednesday, late afternoons, early evenings. It's been working out really well. So museum's still looking great. The restrooms look wonderful. So it's been a very smooth transition with the person that's been responsible for keeping the place clean. And I just want to thank facilities again for their promptness with all the work orders. We didn't have that many work orders in the last 6 months, just 6. And they've been very prompt and responsive. One of the photos there shows an encampment that I found a couple months ago. When we find things like that, I will call in a work order. If there's just a little bit of debris, the museum staff take turns going around the premises to keep it clean. And the last picture there is Sean from facilities. He came by just the other day to replace lights in all the exit signs. And I just am very grateful for facilities, public works, for all the work that they have done to work with our department and all the other departments keeping things going. We can go to the next slide, please. So a program that was in the works that hadn't occurred yet was the cemetery tour. That was a partnership with Bunker Hill Cemetery Association and the Stella Historical Society. That went off without a hitch. It was well attended with 158 people who had registered to go on this walking living history tour where living historians dress up in period attire and stand at the gravesite of a person who is buried there and basically share their story. It was fortunately a very nice September day. Sometimes it could be hit and miss, but we got gorgeous weather that day. We can go to the next slide, please. Our adult programming is our first Thursday programs are our signature adult program. The picture on the left at the bottom is the presentation that I did on an archaeological site that was outside of Kelso, where a B-25 bomber crashed in 1947. And it has connections with the Maury Island incident, if you're into UFO stories and things like that. It packed the room. I mean, we had so many people there that wanted to hear about that story. A lot of the UFO crowd was there. So it was quite a lively presentation. And then the other picture is our annual membership meeting, where we had a local author come and talk about the elephant farm that was outside of Woodland. Next slide, please. We have public and family programming. This is pictures of our winter festival last year, which is in early December. Celebration was New Year's around the world, and it's a free family event that goes on every year. Danielle Robbins, our educator, puts a lot of effort into it. And then I thought I'd throw in a couple pictures of Larry Hembry and Scott Neves from Department of Emergency Management, and they're buying some treats for Christmas gifts for friends at our gift shop. And it is election day, so I figured I'd put in a picture of our Cowlitz County retired elections drop box. The whole museum is decorated very nicely with holiday flair during that time. It really is kind of a joyous place to be. Incidentally, Cowlitz County is one of the earliest 2 counties to adopt the Dropbox ballot boxes. And so that box looks like a regular US mail box that has a locking mechanism on it. And as you look at the boxes now, they are a reinforced steel armored box. So they came out with a criteria for how these boxes are, but we have one of them, the older retired ones, on display at the museum. Next slide, please. Some department acquisitions that we received donations from the community. We got lots of stuff, but I'm just going to talk about the local sports history that we have, because we were lacking in that in our collections. And a local resident, David Ritchie, who graduated from Kelso High School, class of '92, he went on to play pro football. He also played for UW, and you can see his UW helmet there. We have several pro football helmets from his career there. Game played jerseys, helmets, footballs, all kinds of material that will become a future local sports history exhibit. And then, of course, with the departure of the Cowlitz Black Bears, we did receive Corby, the mascot, and also game played jerseys, jerseys that represent all the different styles of jerseys through the 15 years that they played at the LCC Story Field. So those are some things that kind of excited me that came in. Next slide, please. Another thing that excites me is when there's a school bus that's at our museum, because it is a challenge to get schools to come on site at times, but when they do, I always like having the kids utilize our exhibit space. We'll do programming in our meeting room. Sometimes the kids will be split into 2 different groups, where one's out in the galleries and one's doing activities in the meeting room. And I think the black and white picture is a local preschool that came in. Next slide, please. But when we can't have kids come to the museum, we bring the museum to the kids through our traveling trunk program. So these are some photos of our traveling trunk program. And then there was also a different program at a school where these children are actually holding the David Ritchie game played helmet and a couple of pictures from him. One thing that he wanted was to make sure that local kids could see that there are people that make it up into the big time here locally in our county, and he was one of them that made it to the NFL and, in fact, to the Super Bowl with the Broncos. Next slide, please. Much more recently, Squatch Fest was an opportunity to connect with many more people, and here's Danielle Robbins again, our educator, and she's interacting with a child doing a craft that we set up a table at. I'm at a career day in the far right picture at another school talking about the museum profession. And there's a picture of just Squatch Fest showing people in the county fairgrounds or county event center. Next slide, please. And then I love getting our exposure out there in various forms of media, not just social media, but also in print, radio, and TV. Larry Hembry from the Department of Emergency Management and I have been partnering on Masters of Disasters, which talks about disaster preparedness. And there's always a historical component because we're a region that has been hit with multiple natural disasters. So we'll lead the conversation with some photos from the museum or artifacts on display and talk about the local disasters that have actually happened. And then the most recent one we recorded was on flooding, for example. And then we'll bring in professionals like from the first responding community, or we had Public Works come and talk about how they respond to adverse weather circumstances. And on KLOG, we have a show called Today in Cowlitz County History. It's about a 1-minute history spot that airs every morning, 3 times in the morning. And that's very popular. There's a mechanical glitch where we lost about 2 weeks worth of it, and the radio station got all kinds of calls and emails asking where the show was. And that's a great way to test if people like it or not, if they definitely missed it. Next slide, please. And tonight is our first ever inviting the Kelso Longview Chamber of Commerce, which the Historical Society is a member of, to a business after hours at the museum from 5 to 7 p.m. So we're getting ready for that. We're excited to showcase the museum to our local business community. And this will be a first time in my knowledge that we've done this. Next slide, please. And then coming up, Moments That Made Us, our America 250 exhibit will be going up. It should open March 5th. That's the plan. And then that black and white picture is Abel Ostrander's grave taken. That picture was taken in 1966. And he is a person that came to Cowlitz County that has connections. He was, I think, about 6 years old when the Revolutionary War started. So he's somebody that has history back to that era and location. That's part of a local interpretive panel that we'll have up on display. And then in the spring next month on March 28th, we'll have our opening reception for our 6th annual Spring Art Show, which is a partnership with the Columbia Artist Association. Brings in a lot of people to the museum to look at local artists, and the art's all for sale too. So you have a chance to support our local community. I think that might be it. If the next slide probably, yep, there we go. So that's what we've been up to the last few months at the museum. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
What do we have planned for our Washington 250 that the county is doing?
As far as Cowlitz County itself, the county itself, there's a lot of organizations that are doing things like Daughters of the American Revolution, for example, or I know that the city of Longview has expressed some interest in doing some things, and a lot of it's modifying existing things like, say, the Go Forth Festival and having a 250 theme. I do know that the county fairgrounds with the county fair is going to have a strong America 250 theme. So I would say as far as a county backed or led America 250 event, the county fair might be the one to talk to the most. And they are part of our committee and they come to the meetings when they can.
Good. You've done a great job of coordinating that throughout the county.
Thank you.
I really want to,
Thank you.
yeah, commend you on that. Thank you for your work
Yeah,
on it.
thanks. I'm excited to see what they're going to do in Kalama too.
I did see that was
There's some
approved.
good
so
news
yeah,
coming out of there.
That's going to be neat.
You talk about membership. How many what is the level of membership?
To the Historical Society, we have about 250 members.
About 250?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know the Traveling Trump program, I know it's been popular. How many of those do they do a year?
I reported on that. I had the numbers. Daniel compiles the numbers at the end of August. And so I reported that at the last meeting, but I can email you all with her numbers again.
Yeah,
But it's
I
been,
think it's pretty healthy.
yeah, it's a healthy number, and I know it went up 8%, I believe, year over year from the previous year. She's maxed out pretty much where she's at. So I don't see those numbers necessarily getting a lot higher unless we're able to hire additional help as far as the society hiring additional help to get out there into the schools. She does have to turn down schools every spring because they pretty much book up by March, April. And so you get people calling at that time trying to get you in for May, and her schedule's already filled up with those programs.
Yeah. I know that's been an increasing program. Membership numbers, has that been increasing, or you got a pretty steady group that?
It's been steady. There's been a little bit of a drop off, which I think is a trend with membership organizations anyway. If you look at other nonprofit organizations or community service groups, they're all just trending that. I've talked to my other colleagues in the museum field, and they're also having that issue. Now, one thing I will say that I am pleased to see is that the Clark County Museum in Vancouver, I am friends with the director there, and they broke 600 members about a year ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we are at 250. They got over twice as many. Well, they're also a county that's got 5 times as many in population. So per capita, we actually have a pretty robust membership compared to them. If we're a little under half their membership, but a fifth of their population size.
Yeah.
So I had to look at that and put that into perspective. When I first heard about that, I thought, oh my gosh, we're in trouble here, but it's not what it seems to be. Again, we are having our membership drive going on right now at the business after hours tonight. I will be promoting that to our local business community. And we have had good responses when we personally call people who have maybe had their membership lapse. Sometimes they forget, it gets lost and it gets in the shuffle of all their paperwork at home. Oh yeah, oh gosh, I forgot. And then that's how you get those memberships to renew. So we've had good luck with that.
Then the last question, for my curiosity, traffic through the building.
I don't have those numbers on hand right now, but I can share them with you.
General sense, is it?
It's kind of like it ebbs and flows every day and every week. There are times when it's very quiet, and usually when we're understaffed, when say somebody's sick, Danielle's out in programs, and most of the staff leave by the early afternoon, leaving me as the only staff person there. That's when everyone shows up at once and the phones ring. But we can have anywhere from, we've had days where there's nobody that shows up or very few that show up, and then days where a senior group shows up without letting us know. They just drop in on us with a van full of 15 people, and then families all show up, and we have 30 or so people walk through the galleries that day.
In your sense, Joseph, over the last few years, do you think it's increased?
Our visitorship?
Yeah.
I think it has. I think people coming through the door has been pretty strong, but also our outreach as far as when we are able to touch people off-site as well. One thing that is a challenge for the museum, everybody drives by it every day on Allen Street, but they're going to work or from work. Oh, I'll get over there sometime. And then people, when they do walk in, they'll say, gosh, I haven't been here for a while. I drove by all the time. Because once you see the museum, when you're going from Kelso towards Longview, when you're heading westbound, you've already overshot the street, because then it's a one-way street on 4th. And so then you just keep going.
Yeah.
So that is just one of the, the location issues. It's got great street appeal, but once you see the museum, if you're driving right past it, you cannot take that turn up 4th. And then, people who, they'll often, like during the holidays, you'll see people bring their families in, families visiting from out of town, coming in. And I think that's common for a lot of tourism type sites that are in your backyard. Oh, I can go there anytime. I haven't, gone up to the mountain for quite a while, even though the road's washed out, but I don't get up there as often as I did when I first moved here.
Yeah, true. Okay. Appreciate the update.
One other thing is, beyond just the public coming to visit, we also have that meeting room that's utilized by local governmental agencies. So we have a group coming in with WSU Extension tomorrow morning for a day to use the meeting room. So we also get a lot of use that way as well.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Public Works.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Savannah Clement. We actually do have an executive session, but did you want to do that at 2 o'clock, Kelly, or do you want us to start now? We're fine either way. Now's fine. Okay, so this is with HR, and I'm sure she's listening, so she'll be on her way. And the executive session is for performance of a public employee. We're asking for 10 minutes, and I'll try to keep it shorter. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, back from executive session, no actions. Jessica, do you have something for us?
Yes, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a request from Public Works. They're requesting to reclassify their finance manager position, which is currently vacant, to the Public Works Admin Services Supervisor and fill that position. And then also change their buyer position, which is filled, to a purchasing supervisor position, which will give that position a 5% pay increase.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll go ahead and move forward with our current agenda unless the board would like to say otherwise. Okay. So our agenda today is pretty short. We do have some items to discuss, which the first one is actually Sean. Susan sat down. He's going to talk about the telecommunications conditions of approval, which is one of his items that he brought with Public Works over to OFM.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Sean Roy, Finance Director. I believe you were passed out a copy of this memo, we'll call it, from the board. This should be your second time seeing this. I believe a few weeks ago we talked about it briefly. So the purpose of this document is to kind of provide the, the who, what, when, where, and how for cell towers and telecommunication items attached to our buildings or on our properties. We're coming into the season of renewing or renegotiating some of our leases for these towers. And so we wanted to have a strong document with our position on the entry and how the design and such things are going to be done moving forward.
Just for a brief explanation for the public as well, pretty much anything that's on top of our buildings, we do try to get lease agreements going for. Historically, that hasn't always been the case, but as you're looking at the Hall of Justice or this building as well, you'll see a lot of those towers. Those are normally cell phone towers. We have one of the highest points in the area to offer service. And so this will lay some of that groundwork.
So this brings uniformity to not only the agreement, but the physical installment and what it's supposed to be on the buildings.
Yeah, it'll bring uniformity to how they access the buildings, the timing of that. Currently, some of those agreements allow 24/7 access. Those do need to be have a person with them when they access certain areas of the building. As they propose designs or changes to those, we'll get the schematics associated with it so we can see if it aligns with our building plans, power, and other things of that nature, maybe internet to feed those towers. So if the board, oh, go ahead.
So is this something that we currently have and we're just changing some of the verbiage on, or did we not have anything like this to begin with?
Currently, they're all ruled by their own independent contracts. We do not have something similar to this on the books. This would be a new item.
Is there a cell tower on this building?
There used to be network towers for 911. Those have been removed since then. Currently, there's nothing on this building. The Hall of Justice does have 2 cell towers, some 911 towers, and then ham radio as well. And then we also have some standalone towers on our properties.
And so if one of those cell towers goes down in the middle of the night, they've got some way to access that if they want to get up there and fix it at 1 in the morning?
They do not have keys to the building, no.
No. They have to go through our facilities team to do that.
So the service would be down until such time as they could get through the process of getting approval to get up there?
It would be spotty. I don't know if the whole, the whole area would be down, but it would, there'd be some missed
Okay.
service in that area.
But currently, they would still have to gain access through our facilities team to do anything.
Mhm.
This just lays out that communication lines better on how that process goes.
Okay.
Quick side note, because I know you guys are aware of this. We have a theory that one of the small satellites up on this building's roof is the culprit of our cracked atrium window, actually. So that's what we think. We don't know. So
It has been removed.
it has been removed.
Say
but-
that again, you think what?
a small satellite that was above the atrium that is cracked, that we've been working on a solution, an engineering solution for. We believe it was caused by a small satellite that was mounted above it. So just the more you know. So when will we expect to have this in front of the board if they are okay to move forward?
Yeah, so we bring it back formally and it would be reviewed and approved by the board, just an open session like this. It's not an official policy of the county. This would be a departmental policy as we move forward.
Would you consider more like a template to, okay.
Yeah, it'll be referenced in our contracts moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I know Susan has some road property updates.
So good afternoon, Susan Eugenius. I have property acquisition documentation for 2 of our projects. The first one is for the Sweet Birch storm sewer, the emergency repair that we did in the fall. This is just closing up the loop. When we did the process, we got a possession and use from the property owner. We completed the appraisals, laid out the easement, and they have agreed to it. So they have signed off on that document, and it's just the last part of that project. And then the other 2 that I have, one is they're both related to the Shadow Mountain project. One is the actual purchase of the site for the reservoir, and then the other is the easement for the water coming from our lower reservoir up to the site. So I'm asking permission for the chairman to sign these 3 documents.
I'm okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have from Public Works unless the
It-
board has other items.
This completes everything on Birch,
This is the last item on Sweet Birch, yes.
and the guy's okay now?
The storm drain has been relocated and this buttons up our property side piece of it. The other items are still being discussed, I think.
Oh,
Through risk, the repairs have been made, and this makes the easement official because we relocated it to the adjacent property. So this was getting the easements from that property owner.
okay.
And we did that fairly quickly from the time we got approval on that easement to move it, right? I mean, it was
Yes, we
quick.
did.
Yeah, good job on that.
That's
Okay.
what we have. And that completes our items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina?
Good afternoon, Gina James, Health and Human Services. We have Community House on Broadway here today. They came before the holidays and shared some information about some projects they had in mind and some funding requests. They are coming back today to just give some updates on those items and maybe some information about their annual report. So I'll invite them up and share. You guys.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good.
Good. So, wanted to go over, the reason we're here today is we had those three proposals prior. And I think it was back in December, wasn't it? Or it was, yeah, it was, yep. And so long story short, we had a good December. I mean, the best holiday giving we've ever had. And so as we go through this book right here, you'll see the annual report. First few pages are just summaries, but then there's a recap of some numerical stuff. But when we get back to page 9 and 10, 10 has our financial breakdown here of revenue and expenses. And we ended up out of the 3.3 million 75 on the revenue and 3.1 on the expenses. And we actually cleared 243,000, which was kind of ironic. You know, it was like a nip and tuck year so that we came out ahead. We were running behind probably around 13,000 a month, it seemed. But usually our funding comes in during the CARES campaign. And then that gets us through to October, and then October, November, December, we finally start getting some funds in again. And we just had the best year we've ever had. And so with that, I backed out a lot of the requests. The one that I had that we thought, oh, you know what, the 18 to 25-year-olds, the hotel, you know, the transitional living. Honestly, I'm tuckered out. You know, we've done a lot of stuff and I'd rather not take that step because it's only, from what I understand, the funding for the Consolidated Homeless Grant expires July 2027. Is that correct? I think it is. Gina said, yeah. And so with that in mind, there's no reason to run a pilot project that short of time, because by the time you get it started, you know, we're talking just a 1 year, and you're not going to see the results clear enough to see if it was effective. And so that's really a 2 or 3 year pilot project we were thinking about. But since that season has passed, I've tossed that aside and decided not to pursue that. The one that we did want to pursue, well, also too, Best Place, since we came out ahead, Best Place, we don't need the funding. We were coming up behind, but I do want you to look at this. So when you go to the page 10 in this book here, when you look at the breakdown of our revenue, you could see that contributions was 33%, which that was about $1 million. You know, that was really the highest we've ever had. And I think people largely were driven by the popularity of seeing that the youth are being taken care of. So thank you for making that decision. I know it was kind of a tough one for you guys to make, but it was definitely something that resonates with the community. I'll show you a few other things that show that. But look at, so the contributions for individuals was 33%. Facility leasing. Now grants was only 3%, so that's really low. But we're not a big grant seeker, and I'll show you why. Facility leasing, we've been able to fortunately have a number of facilities that are paid off, but we can lease portions of it to subsidize community house, such as the place from Best Place. We've got Mackin's Auto Body and Core Health that leases sites from them, from Community House. The original building from the doctors that entire building was given to Community House. Core Health rents that out from Community House, as well as we've got the chess, which is really, originally, we bought it with Core Health money, but we had had a strange deal go on where we had requested for some funds. The funds gave it to Community House, so we had to literally turn it over to Community House in order to get those funds. So Dave Nelson, attorney, judge, he helped us with that matter to figure that out. So there's a site there also leased. So all that to say is 15% of our funding comes from that. 18% comes from service and contracts. In 2015 and 16, there was this, does it help people's behavioral health if they have jobs and housing? Does it contribute and help them with their mental health? And I think it was the 11-15 waiver, if I remember right. And they ran it for 2 or 3 years and they said, yeah, it does actually. But it's only when you actually require services to be had. That's the only way it comes out. So long story short, they have Medicaid gives community-based organizations, CBOs, opportunity to bill Medicaid, not as a behavioral health agency, but as a community-based organization. So Community House actually gets to bill Medicaid for the supportive housing, supportive employment. And so that helps subsidize, obviously, our income. And then lastly, you'll see the support from Core Health. Core Health, I started Core Health for Community House specifically because it was chaotic when I got there in 2012. So when I started that, we were cost plus 2% for the first, goodness, like from 2015 through 2020. And then the BHO disbanded, and then we went to the MCOs. And I remember the first month, April of 2020, I think it was 2021, we lost 30,000. So we thought, oh no, this is going to be tough. But actually, we've got such a creative model because you've got the captive audience. You've got a majority of the people there that are there for, they need mental health. They need chemical dependency counseling. And it's a no-brainer. And I remember Tim Kruger? Tim Kruger. He was ombudsman. And I remember it was kind of funny when I started, because the first 2 or 3 years, people were saying, oh, they're forcing us to do this, they're forcing us to do this. And so Tim Kruger would get these complaints called by the health department. And eventually he just said, to tell you the truth, guys, if you don't have a car to drive down to the 748 14th Avenue site and they're going to watch your kids for you and you can have your appointment while you're having that, and they're letting you to stay here for free, why wouldn't you have your appointment here? So it ends up being close to about 90%, 85 to 90%, I would say, get their services at Core Health. But some people, they come from other organizations, and that's fine until they slip up. And if they slip up, that means maybe they're doing that to either they've got a preferred provider or they're not really being effective with what they're doing. So all that to say is we say, if you want to stay with us, you can't keep using, you're going to have to switch to Core. Otherwise, you got to move out. And that's only when it fails. Other than that, people do have the choice. But so you can see how our funding has been diversified since 2012 to current, which makes me happy because I can retire in a few years and know that we're going to be strong and survive and be strengthened. This statistics sheet here shows all the stats. You could look at them and question us about them and stuff. But one thing's notable here too is the CPS cases doubled in a year. So we went from 20 to 40 or 20 to 39. And so CPS, we're, Beth's Place is, and Community House is helping out CPS as well as juvenile detention, you know, in a big way. But this is the other part when I wanted to say, it really shows that it resonated with the community, because look at the back pages here, 14 and 15. You've got all of these organizations, businesses, and churches and whatever. And this isn't even all the groups that do cooking as well, but that's a lot of organizations that,
Frank, let me cut you off real quick. Did you provide that to us earlier? Where can we get those?
no, I just, you have them. Oh, you haven't been looking at them?
We don't have them.
Oh, Kelly's got them. I thought she gave them to you. Goodness gracious. I was telling you those page numbers because I thought you had them. Well, I'm not going to start over,
No, don't
but
do that.
I think you guys can look through it. And you got some questions to that, because I just have one request for you today. And then we are offering you up the audit from, what is it, Baker Tilly. It used to be Moss Adams. And so 2 years ago, Community House on Broadway, we have contracted our accounting through Chase and Spurgeon, then it went to the Future Group, now it's us, Opsel Dawson. So Opsel Dawson now is the head of it, Dave Future and Dave Spurgeon. Dave Spurgeon's retired. We want to make sure the books look good. We've never received more than, gosh, I don't think more than 250. What was the year we did the CCBHC? Jordan? Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Community House on Broadway is not received to the level of federal funding to trigger a single audit process.
But we decided since
But
Spurgeon
community-
and those guys are
Yeah.
retired, I want it clean.
Right. Yeah, so we started the audit process 2 years ago. So in 2025, we underwent a internal controls review audit, which the results of that, the letter to the board has been provided to you in the packet. And then we've been building on those insights and results, and then have contracted, gosh, I think it was in September, October, we contracted obviously for this year, 2026 fiscal year, to audit the 2025 books, go through the normal audit and financial statements compilation.
Yeah. And in the past, we really, didn't really have the excess funding to do that, but Core Health has, the way Dave Nelson, our lawyer, has written it up. And maybe you could talk about the partnership and how legal beagle it is, because we wanted to make sure everything's above board.
Right, so working with council and then also working with Baker Tilly, looking at specifically the interconnectedness of the two nonprofit organizations, right? So Community House on Broadway and then Core Health being two separate entities, both organized as 501c3 nonprofits, sharing a common mission, and then looking at ensuring that the support of one to the other is obviously above board and in line with IRS and legal regulations.
You said
yes,
something
sir.
that if you could please restate it. You said you don't receive some sort of federal funding that triggers a specific type of audit. Could you say that again?
Yeah,
I think it's 750,000,
It's like-
isn't it?
and it recently changed to like 750 or up to $1 million. It's a threshold number of direct federal funding that triggers what's called a single audit, or I think
Gina.
maybe in the
Yeah.
past they called it a yellow book audit.
Maybe, yeah,
Um,
if you receive.
So we haven't reached that
Mhm.
threshold at Community House on Broadway or at Core Health.
Yeah, so if you receive X amount of dollars in federal funding, then federal requirements require you to have a federal single audit each year. So there are some organizations that receive a high amount of federal funding, and they would be required to do that federal single audit as part of that if they meet that funding threshold. I think it is 750,000
Yeah, I think
annually or
so.
something like that.
Mhm.
750 is what it is now. What was it before?
Well, I think it went from 500 to 750, and we've just never reached that, so,
Okay.
and neither do we want to.
Yeah, and that's specific to federal funding. If you receive that amount of federal funding, then there's federal requirements for you to do that single audit.
So like Medicaid, we get Medicaid dollars for core health. Those aren't federal funding. Those are through the state.
So you're saying that in lieu of that audit, because you haven't met that threshold, you're instituting an audit on. your
Yeah,
own?
on our own.
Yes, so
Yeah, yeah,
internally,
yeah.
under the board's direction and obviously to look at our own books, that's the process that we've undertaken.
Yeah. And so all that to say is, all we've got is one request today, and it's the TBRA assistance. And it's $50,000. There is, Nora, where's that other sheet here that shows the history? Do they have the history?
Yeah.
Do you guys show them it, Jordan? So you got one with the
And it
green
has a
logo there?
community also.
So that shows the history of TBRA funding that we would get through the city of Longview. And in 2025, we didn't get any, is that correct? I think we're down to like 10,000 or less. And so they weren't able to give any this year because of the encampment. So.
So is this subsidized housing that you're?
It's,
what
yeah,
does this total
what
represent?
the agreement we had with the city of Longview is that people would go through community house and they'd have to do the chemical dependency. Adam Trimble helped us set it up, actually. And I think he works for you guys now, doesn't he? I think he works
Yeah.
for okay. So anyhow, we made an agreement where we make sure that they are good landlord tenants. And we don't want to put anyone out there that's going to stain or tarnish our name. And neither do we want that money used for the city to be going out that way because, you know, you can look right here on look on page 6 in this book. On page 6, you'll see the number of landlords that we work with. And the only reason they work with us is because we do try to make sure that people are clean and sober approach. And we're not gonna, one of the leverages we have is we could say, if you're not paying your lease, if you're tearing up the place, you gotta move out. And we help the landlords by saying they could come back into community house. If they refuse, they might not be able to come back into community house in the future. You know, they'll be red flagged. So we do have some leverage because people are coming in to live for free. And when people voluntarily come into you to say, I want to be a part of your program, Dr. Maherg, Stephen Maherg, as well as Mark Bollinger, I've asked them before, I said, can you mandate an assessment when they come in? And he said, absolutely. Because they're saying, I need your help. And so they voluntarily come in. And so this amount of landlords that work with us, and here's look in the page before, you see the number of employers that employ residents from community house on page 5. All these systems are built up to be around people that are, you know, clean and sober approach. Now, that page that you held up, Jordan, why don't you go through that real quick? I think it was like 35 total. On the back, it said 35 total. And how many failed in that 35?
Yes, so since reviewing our participants in the TBRA program that we've been running since 2022, we've had 35 households participate in the program. Over the 4-year time horizon, we spent assisted them with $97,000 in rental assistance. It is time-based rental assistance, and it is also income-based program. Out of those 35 families, when we look back through the data, 3 of those families ended up not being successful on the program. So it had a very high success rate in getting folks into permanent housing and supporting them in that process. And really key to kind of the TBRA model is being able to walk alongside them and continue to provide those wraparound services. So when they're in community house on Broadway, as Frank shared, they work with an employment specialist but also with a housing specialist, right? To be able to move out of the community house and into stable housing for their household family on their own. Those services continue with them when they move out. And that's one of the things that we're able to do with the TBRA tool. And it, 35 families out of a 4-year time horizon. So it's not every family that's utilizing this tool, but it is one tool in the toolbox. And as families utilize this tool, we are able to really require that we walk alongside them with their housing specialists through that time to ensure that they're maintaining the best we can, help them maintain that stable housing. We do believe that a review of the participants that have utilized this program have had a very high success rate.
On this, so that you know, on this page here, I apologize for flipping so many pages, but this annual report, this 2-page annual report, one of the things I want to point out is the recidivism rate. When I started at Community House, I have no idea what the recidivism rate was. It might have been 15%, 20%. I have no clue. I told Melissa Taylor when I first started, I said, it's going to take about 2 or 3 years just to find the numbers I trust. But, we've been doing this for quite a few years and we go through painstaking measures to make sure. But now this is the resident return rate. This doesn't include Chess, but it includes Community House. And so you'll see 22 singles or individuals returned, which is 5% recidivism rate. And the families, only 2 families returned, and that's 2%. And so that tells me that people, they know when they come back, they're going to have to do the work, and so, and the whole thing is, are they ready for recovery? And that's really when people, besides getting into episodal situations, they're going to have to develop those tools, and a lot of them come through strong faith. We just had 2 kids baptized. Here's the way of the world. We had 2 kids baptized last week, and one of them got kicked out yesterday. I'm like, geez, freak. But, it planted the seed because we got Young Life at Ascent. And so the kids at Best Place, about half of them are going to Young Life every other Monday at Ascent. And then I think they're going to Renewal City Church. That's where the kids got baptized the other day. But to get right back down to it, the SBAR, Gina had us do an SBAR for the request. And so it's 50,000. We're figuring 50,000 because we were going to say 33,000, but it's a little bit over a year and a half, right? And so when we figure we can spend down about 50,000, and that would keep those that are ready to move out, and then it creates more room for those that need the help to start from ground zero, because we are going to continue to serve those families. We don't want them back. We want them to get this done and done right the first time. Yeah.
So Frank, let me go back to my original question. The average cost per month per household, is that cost a subsidy or is that the cost of the housing unit itself?
When which page are you looking
On
at?
the TBRA here.
Okay, that one there.
Yeah.
Jordan, go ahead.
So-
Yeah, that's the cost of the subsidy. So it's not, that's not their average total rent. It's the average TBRA support of their rent,
So what makes up the difference?
their own income.
They are
So it is an
actually-
income-based program, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when Adam Trimble, and you can ask Adam this, I think HUD did a report on us like 2 or 3 years into it. And they said, man, you guys don't really give out a lot, because a lot of other organizations, especially up in Seattle, they give a lot of support. But we parse it out and we make sure that they're working for it, because last thing we want is just another return. So,
Frank, let me ask you a question aside from all of this. right
sure.
here. You stated that you've been doing this a long time, 2012.
No, 12, yeah.
Okay. And I see that you've got the numbers to
Mhm.
show, a low recidivism rate and the success stories that you have here.
Mhm.
But statistically, the numbers within our community and our state are not going down.
No, and you know why?
So I want to hear what your
Okay.
thought process.
Well,
is for
it's
that.
still being led in a state that believes in housing first. It's been a prolific problem since I started in 2012. As a matter of fact, I was warned about it when I came in because we had housing first coalitions. Probably the first 5 or 6 years we had it, and it was a big, heavy county push because it was a big state push. And it originally came, Dennis Culhane, I did some history on this. Dennis Culhane did a Gates Foundation study on veterans in a housing first model. Get them in a house, will they do better? This and that. Well, then they ended up flipping it over to the families and individuals instead of just having it approved for the veterans. And so then they started to run this single blanket method or methodology of saying, hey, you put them in a house, their, stress will go down and they'll start doing better. But it won't. Not when the brain is running off the rails, not when the structure of the families and the kids are running crazy. I mean, I sat here, but that's what it is. That's why this state sucks. I apologize, but I don't know if you know this, but in 2016, I ran for county commissioner. And one of the big deals was I was really anti-housing first. And we need to have a clean and sober drive to it. And so with that, we lost our funding from the county for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know if you know that, but we did. Gina, you might have been here during some of that, maybe?
Not so much, no. I
Okay,
think I
not so
came in
much. That was-
just after that.
But we lost our funding because I just didn't believe in that method. So, and that's why, because Maslow's hierarchy isn't just simplistic, it doesn't work that way. When you're working with people, you got generational stuff, you got physiological stuff that goes on, and life's hard for some people. They're born in a bad situation, but some, they create their bad situation. Nonetheless, God gives everyone an opportunity to recover, but you got to be able to do the work and make that decision, and the state doesn't believe that. Yeah. So the rapid rehousing that we have at CAP, the Community Action Program, that is a housing first. So we do have housing first model in Cowlitz County. And that funding there is used in that way. But this tenant-based rental assistance, we got high barrier. Low barrier is, it was Hope Village. You guys know that we put in to do Hope Village, but they didn't want us to do UAs and certain things like that. So we said, well, we're not going to do that. We want to make sure they're progressing. So that, and Ralph DaCosta Nunez is out of Columbia University, which you think, boy, that's a very liberal university. But Ralph DaCosta Nunez heads up the Institute for Family Development, and he is interested most in families. And he said there's 3 categories. There's people that housing first is their only problem. Housing, maybe their rent went up out of their range. That's housing first. That might be 10% of the population that's homeless. But then the second layer is those vocational and educational. Maybe the market's changed and, media is totally different now and everything's turning different again. So people have to get re-educated, so they have to work on that. And then thirdly, which is the biggest category we see, is those with mental health, chemical dependency, generational poverty. And once again, we had our drug and alcohol statistics recently, And 85% of the youth families in their homes are using. 85% of the youth out of the 123, 85% their family members used. Now, you go to the adults, out of the 979, it was a little over 50%. In 2023, we did it 1 year and it was 65%. But here's what we did. And I hate to say this, the top substance that leads people to intensive outpatient placement, for their IOP, the drug that drives them there, the adults, it was alcohol, number 1. Number 2 was meth. Number 3 was marijuana. Number 4, fentanyl. And we've got the numbers and the ages all diced out on a report. And this is a 24-25 blend. And the youth, the 123, guess what the top drug was or substance? Marijuana. There it is. What's number 2? Alcohol. So we're doing it to ourselves. We just added on and legalized and made it okay for marijuana. So now you see you went from a 50% used in the household to a 85% steadily, or 80 to 85. So we just shot ourselves in the foot because the high level of THC, and I'm glad Trump is actually exploring the defective part of THC. Because there's a lot of, maybe there's good measures to it for cancer and blah, blah, blah. But it's important to study what causes psychosis. Because there is a lot of high level THC stuff causing schizophrenia.
So,
Sorry for the long answer.
no, you said a lot there, and I want to try and stay focused on a couple of things.
Sure.
In your S-bar, I went through and
Mhm.
read, and I'm not sure it was for your teen to 25. Some of the things that you're talking about.
Oh, the 18 to 25-year-olds. Yeah. I pulled that out totally.
Yeah, but I want to address the
Yeah.
couple things that you mentioned, and
Yeah.
the reason that I asked that question
Hmm.
about what's causing this and where we're at. So, you talked about going about that program, helping people with life skills, being dependent, and the things that you went through and
Hmm.
mapped out in there. And the problem that I see with that, and I commend your efforts in it, but the problem is that's what they should be learning at public school,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right? Those are things that they should be learning in an institution that we're already paying taxes
That's
into
right.
that
Yeah.
is failing.
Amen.
And so now we're talking about spending more money in another organization,
Mhm.
taking taxpayer money to try to do the same thing that they should have been doing while they were in school for 12 years.
CPS,
Okay, 14.
juvenile
whatever it
detention,
is.
same
So-
thing.
So that portion of it, I agree with your comment about the housing first model not working, but I don't know that that's the problem. The problem
Yeah.
is, it's what you just, when you were talking about the drugs and the alcohol and the marijuana,
Mm.
the problem is that we have developed a system that is reactionary to all of those things.
Mhm.
And we're spending money to react to the
The foundation that's broken.
the foundation itself is what needs to be addressed, but we're not addressing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What we're doing is we're spending a lot of money in programs that there's a lot of organizations within just our county alone
Mhm.
that are all vying for the same money to do the same thing. And what they're doing is they're treating a symptom. They're not treating the problem.
Mhm.
And the problem is, as you just described, is that we live in a state where weed's legal.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go through.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and single moms is our largest family population, 70 to 80% every single year. Single moms,
So I look at that, and that's a
no dads.
societal breakdown
I know.
of
Yeah,
the traditional family.
yeah, I know.
And that's where I really think that one of the things, if we want to spend money Let's spend money on reinstituting traditional family values. Let's spend money on teaching people what it means to raise a family. I don't think that I don't know that there is a child doctor or psychologist in the world that would argue that a child being reared in a loving home with a loving mother and a
Mhm.
loving father is the optimal way to raise a child.
Right, yeah,
Regardless of what your
yeah,
political preferences on sexuality and all that other garbage,
right.
that's the optimal
It is.
place to rear a child.
You've heard of the elephant thing, right? The elephant study in Africa.
Mm-mm.
They were finding rhinos being stomped to death by herds of elephants. And this is back in the 70s. And so what they did is back then they did a study to find out what in the world's going on. And what ended up happening is people were poaching the big male elephants, and these testosterone enraged juvenile elephants were ganging up on these rhinos and stomping them to death. So you lost the bull elephant. You lost something that can establish a boundary. And boundaries are always a big deal. I'm
So
all
to
with you on
to
that.
That point, where I'm coming from is, I don't see creating more programs with more organizations and throwing more money at it as solving our problem. We're not addressing the root issue of what we're dealing with in the state.
Well, our nation too,
As a society.
I mean,
as
look at
Americans.
what's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
you're telling me, I mean, we adopted 5 kids and dad was deported, mom died. They, 2 years after we took the last 3 in, we see this recycled all the time, but you got to do something. And CPS, I would help CPS out with the emergency placement services like I offered them because we got room. They said, a trans can make a decision on which side they want to sleep. And I said, no, I got girls that have been raped here. We're not going to put a guy on the girl's side. They said, well, that's what so we backed out. That kind of policy inhibits, some sort of progress. If we could get these kids, these young kids straightened out and at least some of them on track, that ripple effect, you're going to cut down on the collateral damage of them having babies. At least the kids we adopted, Mari and Johnny, they haven't got their GED yet, but they haven't had kids. They haven't done loaded drugs. And yes, they've got their problems, but we've cut down on the collateral damage, and I think that's part of navigating little by little. It's kind of a biblical thing, little by little. And, I know, yeah, but we can't solve the world problems. We can only deal with the field that we plow. Right now, I see us doing a lot in the juvenile detention because we get the sheriff dropping off people at our house or at Beth's place. We have them literally a fight in the home. They bring them to us and it's considered, okay. They're not breaking probation or anything. And I remember a judge saying, there's a lot of kids that are thrown into this institutional approach and you take on mannerisms, but you got to have an atmosphere where there's boundaries and there's values and, we're kind of acting as the father and the mother because we are parents to each one of those kids. And that's the complexity. I mean, we go to court. We sit there for hours. One's late to school, someone gets kicked out, we run and get him. Someone is doing transitional school, we're all over the place. But we're filling this gap that CPS literally is disgusting. I apologize. Really. I mean, I just had it out with them the other day. So, yeah. Yep. I can only do what we do, and I'm getting tired, So, but this TBRA assistance will help. it will.
I was just, because I know we give cap money for rental assistance. Tell me the differences between the two.
Yeah, so that's one of the nuances with the grant that we'd have to look at. They don't call it TBRA, they don't call it tenant-based rental assistance, they call it rapid rehousing. So we'd have to kind of look at if there's changes in the program model and what that looks like there. So it's similar in that there's rent assistance available with supportive services. Well, folks are working
And
on
that is
things.
only available to like landlords or something, or? I mean, community house doesn't have the ability to tap into that?
Oh, we send people there.
Yeah, so if they had individuals, so we're talking primarily about folks who are HIN eligible. So if they're eligible for the Housing and Essential Needs Program and get a housing referral, if Community House is serving those individuals, then that could be the case. The issue, I think, is probably the timing in that, when folks are ready to leave Community
Right.
House, they may not, we can't immediately connect them with a HIN housing referral. So that's probably the bigger issue is that
Or
timing.
HOSWA vouchers or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
There may not be openings at that time or what have you.
So the money, this money that you're asking for, this $50,000,
Mhm.
it's set aside, it doesn't go into a general fund, it can be
No,
used for
no.
something else.
It's used specifically for them.
And only that.
Yeah,
Mm.
and then there's 10%, I think. Well, that's not 10%, but whatever, for admin fees. Usually the city would allow 10% admin fees.
A de
but I
minimis
see
rate.
3,000's not there, so.
The city used to do it, but they don't want to do it anymore?
Well, they didn't have the money. Yeah, I think money was short because of Hope Village.
And did that, the money that the city gave you, do they have to be a Longview resident that was unhoused or what's the?
Well, I don't think that's the matter as much. If someone has a voucher, obviously, we help some with vouchers, but usually they're the golden goose egg. They get to live for free, right?
I don't know what the requirements were
But-
of the
But
TREF
the
funding.
city of Longview,
Yeah.
it's Kelso Longview, we, because a lot of them, you got to think Country Run, we'll do TBRA assistance for them. Country Run's out in Lexington there.
Who
And
did-
that's the housing that was started in 1999, the late 90s, as a tax-based, they have to have 20 units set aside for low income. And so that's where we put a lot of the single moms out there. And then we'll go out there and pick them up and we have them after school and bring them back out there and keep close tabs with them to keep them on the straight and narrow, hopefully.
Are the guidelines required to qualify for this funding by the recipient? Who sets that?
We set it when we proposed it to the city. We said, hey, we want it to be clean and sober approach. And they agreed, so I was like, that's great.
So the subsidy is determined based on their income. You determine. if
It's
you
a
make
30%, yeah, it's the 30% of their,
So
yeah.
it just makes up the 30% for their housing out of their
Yeah,
income.
yeah. So it might be $500, you could see the level there. If I had my housing person, she could give you the breakdown of everything. 'Cause she's got it all mapped out.
Is there a limitation of time as to how long somebody can be receiving that funding? 'Cause I know some of the other ones you can only get at one time and or
Right.
for a certain amount of time. So somebody could be on this for 5 years.
No,
No.
gosh, no, not even close. Maybe a year, 2 max, but we do a year at a time. We'll commit to a year at a time and then we titrate. We don't want them to become dependent. We need them to be self-sufficient. Yeah.
What do you do to help them with the limited available housing that we have in our area and the fact that their job, they may not increase their income to the point where they can, after a year's time, move into somewhere that's affordable for them?
Well, we have, for one thing, we just work on those 2-year transitional housing. If they come back to us, they know that they have to start from ground zero. So it behooves them to make their own way, or they're going to just be working hard for it. But sometimes that has to happen because laziness is another component to, someone ended up homeless. And there's some low IQs. And there's also a lot of autism. We're seeing a ton of autism. So you take a mom that is a CNA and she has a kid that keeps getting kicked out of school and she gets called away from work, she's going to end up back at the shelter. So you got to come up with a system in order to help her. And like you said, the schools are kind of, but they're not, it's tough. It's just not easy stuff. There's some complexities that, there's always going to be. But we're not the fix-all for the history of time. We're trying to stabilize them, get them out there. So we're not asking for you guys to make some sort of decision. I just wanted to put this out there.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
But I think I understand it. I just want to know the difference between cap and this. I do have a general question, and it's basically just for my own information, and it stems from because when Longview closed Hope Village,
Mm-hmm.
I believe there was a report of and I don't know where this is at, if it's been dropped or whatever, a gal was suing the city of Longview
Yeah,
for
I
taking
saw
away her
that.
house.
Yeah.
So then it just begs the question, how much do you guys deal with that? I mean, what comes your way or
COVID.
what kind of things are you dealing with?
We get lots of threats, but honestly, we've only been, COVID kind of harvested a mentality, to where if someone falls and they get hurt, they get money. And so we got a pretty good lawyer and we're pretty protected. We haven't, they know that they'll never get allowed into community house again if they start doing that. So, I mean, gosh, we're allowing them to live there for free as long as they're working on their recovery. So we've had about 3 cases and we don't get hit with that kind of thing. There's an agency in legal that does lawsuits regularly to the city of Longview, and we're fortunate. We have them signed. We do everything. I even went to Northwest Justice one time and I said, hey, if I say they have to save 80% of their income, do they have to? Could we ask their bank statements? They said, absolutely. If they sign, yeah. So that's, yeah.
Well, so on that point, and Doug just walked in, so he's going to hear me ask this, so I'm glad.
Mhm.
You said that they're living there for free, but they're not because we're paying for it.
Yeah.
They're not paying for it. but we
They're
are,
not paying
the
for it.
Taxpayer is.
Yeah.
So is there some sort of
Well,
a service component?
I don't know.
tied
I
into
wouldn't
it?
say taxpayer. Yeah, they are supposed to have volunteer hours and they all got chores.
Well, if
Everyone's
taxpayers-
got chores.
If it's coming
and-
from Medicaid or from us, it's
Well,
coming from the taxpayer.
okay, so,
That's-
yeah, I guess if you want to look at it that way, but I'm not asking, we're getting from people that are tithing, or not tithing, but they were, it's an offering.
Sure. Well, no, I'm just saying to your point about
Yeah.
that. I think a lot of that comes from, to the chairman's question, that
Mhm.
entitlement that you're talking
Oh,
about
yeah,
is one that we allow,
yeah. Well, they're gonna have to work for it. That's why there's a low recidivism rate.
a service
You know what I mean?
clause attached to it that, hey, you have to
Yeah,
do X, Y, and Z
yeah.
as a restitution to.
Well, you saw, there's 108, if you look at this one sheet, there's 108 people that didn't make it. The involuntary exits. And so every year, there's a little over 100 people or families that consisted of people that ended up getting exited or exited themselves, whether it's drug abuse, curfew, bad behavior or violence, and then participation. They've got to participate. And you can see 25% participation. If they're not going to participate, they go. Because we got people that are open and willing that want the help. There's honestly, guys, if you look anywhere else in the state, you're not going to find this. And you might think, oh yeah, right, Frank, but just you check around, you know.
How long can somebody stay in the system under TBRA?
Sorry? Oh, it's like 1 or 2 years. Like I said, Steve, we titrate it down. So it might be like $500 a month and it might be $200 a month. And, you know, so we spread it out. We don't give a lot of money to just a few. And I think that report does show it, but, you know, Gina, I can always give her her stats. I don't care. You know, although some people say, oh, that's confidentiality. We could blot out the names, but it's not health records.
I appreciate all the info.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Doug, can I ask you a question? On lawsuits, kind of piggyback on Commissioner Rader, if we, and any type of lawsuit involving an agency that we send money to, whether it's somebody suing them because they're not letting them stay there, or there's an employee interaction or anything, if we give money to it, do we run the risk, or is it low of being named in something like that because we contribute funds? There's probably always a risk. I'm just trying to.
Sure. It really comes down to what the factual connection and legal connection is between the county and the entity. The closer that connection, the more infused the county is to its operations and responsibilities of oversight, the greater the risk. So I'm not aware what the subject matter was, but that would be what, you know, a question to our office and the analyses would be is what's the entity, what's its role, is it an extension of the county's services or functions? Does the county have a responsibility of oversight and monitoring? Those are questions that are answered on a case-by-case basis.
Well, and it gets me thinking about these type of things, and to be honest with you, because of the juvenile system, where the court said we're not going to have any, you can go back as far as you want, or any kids that say they've been abused, and we're seeing that play out in our state right now. And so I always worry about at some point in time, how do we kind of protect ourselves so that kind of decision doesn't come down and all of a sudden we're responsible for what happened, may have happened 10 years ago.
Sure. And that's part of the metric is when you sit down to make decisions on funding a third party, including whether it can be a vendor even, whether the county's utilizing a vendor to perform a service or provide an improvement or something. What's the level of county's responsibility and monitoring, which is why we go through, you know, a lot of effort and sometimes a progression of arguments with the vendor and as to our indemnification and defense and hold harmless language. And sometimes we advise the county to just walk away, find another vendor. So again, it's on a case-by-case basis, and to answer your question, the matter you've been talking about, that's something, you know, vet it with our office, have that discussion and make an informed decision.
Gina, those type of contracts when we do with the state and stuff, does Doug and them get to see those? So, okay,
And does, in a situation like this, Doug, I'm not, don't know if it would or not, but would joint and several come into play if there was a lawsuit against us with a vendor type situation?
It depends on the wording of, the county can't escape all liabilities simply because of court decisions and statute. And so you have within our hold harmless indemnification and defense language, to the extent phrase like to the extent permitted at law. So it becomes a little bit more difficult with public agencies because the courts have held you can't shift your responsibilities wholly onto another public agency. You each have your own ground. So that's why when we contract oftentimes with the state, and you've seen that as well, is we mutually agree to indemnify and defend each other to the extent of our own respective liabilities and obligations at law, something of that nature. So does that answer your question? And that's something that we've negotiated with the state. So our language of state agrees to indemnify us for this, we agree to indemnify the state for that. The two sections of it language are virtually identical. Everybody's responsible for their own errors and omissions and negligence.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shelley?
Shelley Pierce, Risk and Safety Manager, requesting 30 minutes for our quarterly executive session to review liability claims.
How many minutes do you say? I'm
30
sorry.
minutes.
30 minutes?
Yes, please.
And I think this is,
And I
This
think
is
there's
our
ones
last
right
thing.
after, I believe there's an executive session right after this as well.
okay. Did we have any other business today? Because this will probably be the end of it after the executive sessions. Okay, we'll go back 30 minutes.
The board is extending the executive session an additional 10 minutes until 3:50. The board is extending the executive session an additional 10 minutes until 4 p.m. The board is extending the executive session an additional 15 minutes until 4:15.
Okay, back from executive session, no actions taken. I
Yeah.
think that should be it. We will adjourn.